on YouTube. I should be able to see that first here in a second. So let me wait until it comes up on my screen. So this is that awkwardness that I don't know if there's a better way to like miss out on having this broadcast. Okay.
I just trust your expertise, Justin.
Okay, we are now streaming live on.
All right, there we go. So now you heard there's a 20-second delay. So I'm learning a lot of this. Eventually, someone's going to tell me, hey, here's how you do things more efficiently so you don't look like an idiot. But I'll look like an idiot for now. So it is 1 o'clock. I'm going to maybe give another minute, let people hop on in since we're just here. If anybody is catching up now, don't forget that this is supposed to be interactive. So I've got the chat box up on my other screen. I will be monitoring it. Any chance that we get to incorporate your questions, have Chad answer those, we'll work them in. Or even if it's comments, whatever it may be. But over time, I want this to become very engaging and kind of back and forth rather than just being a boring podcast. So with that, let's go ahead and get going. We're starting off with one person watching, so the numbers will tick up. So today's guest on the Advisor of Tomorrow podcast live is my friend Chad Chubb. Chad is the founder of WealthKeel. Is it WealthKeel Financial or just WealthKeel? I should have looked this up.
Yeah, well, I guess WealthKeel LLC, but we never put LLC in anything.
Okay. So WealthKeel. And the reason I asked him to join me was to talk about having a niche. And we're going to really dive into that. But before that, I just want to give you a little bit of his background. So Chad is a Investment News 40 under 40 class of 2020. And I can't believe that he's not on that. I can't not believe the reason he would be on that list is not because of the niche. That did not come out the way I wanted it to be. I stumbled over my words. Basically, having the niche, which has led to the success that he's had with his firm, is what landed him on 40 under 40. That's what I was trying to say, much more eloquently that way. So I think it's very important. And, you know, if you've read anything that I've written before or listened to my podcast before, I've been kind of anti-niche through very much of my career. And that has changed as of recently. But I wanted to be anti-niche because, people tell you can't do something. I want to show you that you can. So I wanted to show you that you have success as an advisor working with, not a specific group of people. And ultimately, my belief is, and then we'll go into Chad, is for me, my niche had to find me. I had to figure out I can't force something on myself. And we'll find out if that's what happened with Chad or how he got to his niche. But I am very much a believer in having a niche if you find that right group of people that excites you. I think you should be excited about what you're doing. So if there's not one group of people you're super excited about working with, keep on servicing your clients, keep on working with whoever comes in that's a good fit. And then chances are with time, you'll find that right group of people to work with. There's lots of benefits. Last week, Nina Marie Jeffrey talked about the value of a niche when it comes to creating a brand and a brand story and having brand narrative that's very authentic. Having a niche will help out with that. So I've said niche enough times. Let's bring Chad in. Chad, give us a little bit of your background first, kind of how you started your firm, when you started your firm, and then you and I were talking offline beforehand. I think it's One Mic, but I can't remember which Nas song it is, where he kind of works backwards. So the beginning of the song is actually the end of the song. And Kendrick Lamar does that as well on the Damn album. So I thought we would start with all of the success that you're having because of the niche and then work ourselves backwards to before you had one, what was the epiphany that said, hey, here's a group of people I want to serve. Here's how I'm going to go about doing it. So we'll work backwards.
Yeah, no, I like that. So, as I sit here today, we're located in Philadelphia, but I think with most planning firms today, you become kind of a national brand. At least, I guess, for the most parts. Some aren't, they don't do it that way, and they have plenty of success. For us, I think the journey actually to a niche is also really interesting because I think when you maybe hear like some of the podcasts or like XYPN, some of those advisors jump into it. They're like, hey, I have a niche right at the bat. And I wish I was that smart. I wish I would have done that. But this all started back in 2011. So I literally graduated from Penn State and became a financial planner. And back then, I don't think niche was that cool yet. I think Kitches was just starting to use it repetitive, through different podcasts and things like that. And it's kind of come a long way and had a big effect on me. So, as I sit here today, we really only work with Gen X and Gen Y physicians. When we get individuals that come to us that don't fit that, we tell them, hey, there's other better fits. I never thought we would have got to that point. I heard of it and I was like, there's no way. Like anytime someone comes to us, we're like, sure, come on in. So it's been quite the journey. I'll kind of leave it at that, and then we can work backwards to your questions, Justin, and kind of keep more of a timeline to it, but just kind of that initial introduction.
But I did you a disservice as I was, talking about our conversation coming up. I said your niche was physicians. I didn't know you had it dialed into Gen X, Gen Y. And I think as part of what may come up in the conversation is that niche can be, you can have no niche, which is super wide, and you can niche down a little bit, but you can keep on niching, and get very, very specific. And there are benefits to that. And I think there's a lot of benefits to that. Again, for me, it's all about really being excited about who you're working with. And I've got to imagine that part of what maybe led to narrowing down to Gen X, Gen Y physicians probably is as you started working, my guess is, and you'll tell us, my guess is you started with physicians. And then it became more like, well, we're getting a lot of Gen X, Gen Y. We understand their needs better. We can help them better. And because of your expertise, it allowed you to do a better job for those clients, which then that helps your brand and helps your reputation. And then it kind of just naturally forms. So I'd be interested to see if that's part of your story. Real quick, tell us WealthKill's background. I don't care about AUM. I don't care about revenue, but just, when you got started, why you started your firm, what was your backstory beforehand?
Yeah. And I had, a really unique journey in the sense of where I came from that initial out of college phase. I was that story you kind of always hope you hear of, but you didn't hear it, in the sense of I did work with another advisor. I call him my mentor every day. I talk to him, quite a bit. And he's still, for, younger advisor, he's still considered a younger advisor. I don't want to butcher his age. I'm going to say he's in his young 40s. Eric, if I'm wrong, I apologize.
Easy. Hey, I'm 38. I'm getting close to young 40. Be easy.
So he's, you know what I mean? Like for our profession, that's still very young. So it was cool to find him, but he allowed me to essentially be his paraplanner, build my book behind the scenes, and not care about it, in the sense of, go, that's yours, man. Take it and run. So the story, the journey started, went to Penn State, majored in finance. I've always liked personal finance, coming from just a bunch of small business owners, whether it's my mom, my dad, my grandfather. Just kind of always seeing the numbers. One part of my life, I thought maybe it was going to be more of a sports agent route. I just love sports. I would have never made it through law school. I would also don't answer my phone call or my phone like past 8 o'clock at night, because I'm like an old man and go to bed by 9. Also 2 young boys, Justin, as you can relate with 3. They kind of wear you out. So even by the time I get home, I only have like a few hours of energy left. So we went through that phase and met Eric, who again was my mentor. Met Eric actually because he played for Penn State's football team. He was actually working with NFL clients. I was like, perfect. If I can't be a sports agent, I'll be their financial planner. And that was actually kind of like my initial, like, oh, this will be my niche. And then you realize you can never work with professional athletes unless you know like the who's who in the world. So from there, working as a paraplanner, building up my own book. From 2011, when I started, literally, I think I passed my 7 before I even graduated from Penn State. Started working right out of school, 2011. From 2011 to 2017, we were your traditional financial planning, firm. It was really just me, and mostly baby boomers. Like most of our initial clients from 2011 are your traditional baby boomers, and they're clients today. We're working on getting some things organized if there has to ever be transitions there, just as we like really take this niche serious. 2018 was when I passed the CFP, and I told Eric that, hey, we're going to leave the State College area and head down to Philly, because my wife, Mari, we wanted to just kind of experience different things. We were ready for that next phase of life. And he knew that ahead of time. So it wasn't until we got to Philly that we actually started to really find out what we want to be from a niche perspective. And even in 2017, we kind of made our first push towards a niche where we said Gen X and Gen Y. I started my first subscription literally January 1, 2017, assuming that this thing was never going to work. No one's going to pay us a flat monthly fee. And then everyone that we asked said yes. And then we raised fees in 2018 because we were charging like $100 a month. And I'm thinking some people are going to fall off. Everyone said yes again. I'm like, okay, the subscription works. So now it allowed me to say, all right, well, now we can really kind of start to think about Gen X and Gen Y. They don't need to have $1 million. I mean, most of our clients come to us with negative net worth because of student loans. So once we got to Philly, we pretty much were surrounded by physicians. Like literally all of our friends were doctors in some capacity. Just with Philadelphia being a very large teaching hospital city. And all the moving parts just led me to enjoy working with Gen X and Gen Y physicians. It's a more complicated financial plan for that age demographic, which seems like a strange thing to want to go after, but there's just so many moving parts that it really pulled me into it. So that's kind of like the Cliff Notes edition of the major stepping stones. And then obviously I'll kind of pause there at 2018, which I know we're going to dig into 2018 plus more. But that's kind of how we got to where we are, at least, from a niche perspective.
I think it makes sense that you would want to go to the demographic that has a lot of moving pieces. One, because it keeps work exciting. It doesn't get boring, but there's tremendous amount of value that you can bring to them. It's a lot well, I won't say it's easier, but a doctor later in career, student loans are gone. They're probably not worrying about buying houses, starting families, like all these moving pieces. It's a little bit easier and the value is not as great. But if you can help these docs figure out how to tackle the student loans, how to make their first home purchase, how to get married, have kids, grow their family, enjoy life while save for the future, like that's a huge impact. So to me, that makes sense because, I mean, maybe there are more advisors that go after Gen X, Gen Y physicians because of the income and the potential, but I don't know if it's like other young professionals that demographic isn't really sought after that much. So it also gives you a leg up that there's not as many advisors going after them and you can position yourself as the expert.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the value add, I mean, those are really sticky parts, like when you help someone transition through, like when you go from in training to become an attending, like you go from 60,000 to like 250 plus, like going through that, buying your first house, opening up your child's first 529 plan, getting student loans organized, which student loans are a huge value add. I mean, there's a lot of money, and not just like, hey, refinance to a lower rate. Like when the proper income-driven repayment plans, I mean, you can literally save clients thousands of dollars per year on repeat until they get forgiveness. Those are really sticky points, and we're in a trust-based industry. So if you can kind of get those big trust points at the start, I mean, as long as you don't do anything stupid along the way, I mean, you technically should have like a client for life. I mean, it's a really deep relationship you form. And that's also why we like Gen X and Gen Y. I like working with clients that are going through those same life transitions as my wife and I are, or recently went through them or preparing to go through them. I think it just makes it more relatable. Again, we have baby boomer clients. I love them all dearly. And I think we still have things to relate on, but just not as many things as working with, someone that's literally your same age for all intents and purposes.
So I have two quick tangents I want to take us down before we get to the niche. One, because I think people watching may be interested to know, like real quick, how was the transition from working at the previous firm to launching? And the reason I ask that is, I talk to a lot of advisors that are game planning their exit strategy or succession planning, like kind of just talking about they're going to be making a transition, and it's very scary. I think the more stories we can put in front of them of here's how people were able to navigate those waters is great. Now, I think I would have to imagine moving from State College to Philly made that a lot easier. I think if you told them, hey, I'm going to just open up shop down the street, maybe there'd be a little more hard feelings. Maybe not. Maybe like, I don't know, to me, that's my mindset is if I bring somebody on and at the end of the day, they outgrow what I can provide for them or they have aspirations on their own, like, I think that's going to be well wishes. I'll continue to mentor and help. Like, I don't know. I don't see myself being the advisor that makes somebody's life difficult because they seem to leave, unless they did something wrong. So real quick, the transition, how did that go down? What was the scary part of it? How did you navigate that? Or was it as bad as people think?
So again, I think I just fell into a good spot. There was a phase in my life back then where I literally was cold emailing business owners to be like, hey, I want to work for you. I want to intern with you. And that's how I found Eric. And Eric, when I first emailed him, he didn't call me back for like 6 months. When he called me back, I remember literally walking home to my home in State College my senior year. I was like, who the heck is Eric? Like, I don't even know who this is. He's like, you emailed me. I'm like, no, I definitely didn't email you. So our transition was unique because of this. One, I told Eric my aspirations from the start. I said, hey, listen, I want to help you. I want to learn from you, but ultimately I want to write my own story. I want to go do this on my own. So I was very clear at the start, which helped. Then he said, that's fine. You create your own book, do your thing. And when you leave, I don't need any of that. There was a few clients we literally shared. And to this day, we technically still share, in some type of joint capacity where either I run the review or Eric does. There's like, I think 5 households. But Eric also runs the federally registered RIA that we still utilize. We utilize Vicus Capital. So WealthKeel is not its own RIA. We're technically still linked to a broker dealer, to Cetera. We'll actually leave them like next week. But with Vicus, it was much easier because, Eric and I were on the same page. I said, Eric, as long as you guys treat me the way I hope to be treated, I don't need to go form my own RIA. I don't want to send out ADVs. I don't want to do all that. You guys have a great compliance team that I built a relationship with over, 8 years at this point, 7 years when I went to leave. So that made the transition much easier. It wasn't one of those things where it was like, hey, Eric, I'm leaving and I'm also taking, remember, we don't have a huge AUM business either because we do a lot of subscription. Most of our clients have all their money in their qualified plans. So there wasn't really anything too sticky there. But I was just always very straightforward with Eric. Eric always understood what I was going to do. It helped, I think, to remove any awkwardness by Eric knowing that, hey, we're still going to stay a part of that federally registered RIA. So the transition, because of that clarity and knowing, I'm a planner at heart, but like even that, I always need to know so much detail. Our transition, it was really smooth, Justin. It like looking back on it, I couldn't even tell you like a pain point. Like the hardest part was probably literally driving a U-Haul truck down like South Philadelphia, very tight streets. That's like the hardest transition I think I've ever had.
Well, don't apologize for that. I think it's good for people to see that not every transition has to be negative. Our profession, probably 90% of them are, but not every transition and breakaway is going to be a horrible experience. So it's good for people to hear that. The other tangent, and you mentioned it, is you're still affiliated with a broker dealer. And the reason I want to bring that up is I hate how our profession loves to attack each other about business models. You work with doctors, they have their oath, do no harm. Fiduciary standard should probably be that for our profession, but it's not across the board. And what I want those advisors that are listening or watching that are thinking about leaving and figuring out what's the best type of, firm to form, that you can be a good advisor, you can be a fiduciary, act as a fiduciary, put your clients first, and not be fee only. My firm is a fee only, partly, and I've shared this before, partly because when I launched, it would have been too expensive to affiliate with a broker dealer. I had $7 million in assets. Like I was going to be like a 70% payout. Like it was too expensive where I could just go tie up with TD. And I didn't do a lot of commission business anyway. So it didn't make sense. Working with docs, you got to think about disability insurance, life insurance. If they have partnerships or buy-sell agreements, like it would make sense for somebody who specializes to working with doctors to have an affiliation with a broker dealer to be able to administer the insurance part of things. Yes, there are companies out there that can handle that, but trying to work in a third party and get things done is a lot easier when you're in kind of control of the process and can stay on top of clients. So I want people to realize that you can be a great advisor. You can do a very good job with your clients and have a lot of success and do things the right way without being fee only. So I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted you to talk about the structure, but you kind of already hit that. I just want to get in my soapbox because I want more and more younger advisors to not be intimidated by where they might be. A lot of us that come up in the profession, we look back at our profession like, man, I can't believe I worked there knowing now what I know, like it wasn't a good situation, but you have to learn that along the way. So if you find yourself where it's not going to be forever, that's fine. We've all been in that spot and you just kind of what you did, find your way to where you want to be and then follow that route. So I don't know if you have any final comments on that tip about, finding the right business model and choosing what makes the most sense for your business.
Yeah, and our broker dealer life was also relatively unique. From 2011 till literally, like I said, we will leave Cetera in literally the next few weeks.
Do I need a whole publication of this? I mean, it's live, so Cetera, if they're watching, they're gonna know.
Yeah, no, and Cetera, they're a good independent broker dealer. Like you hear the horror stories, like where you can't do content. Like we always send everything to Cetera, and believe me, there were some times where I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys gotta be kidding me. But like at the end of the day, every time I get mad at compliance, I always come back and say like they're doing it to protect us. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they always have to administer to the lowest common denominator. You always have to assume that Bernie Madoff is somewhere in that firm, and you always have to kind of comply to that standard, which can sometimes stink. But for us, The one thing that was really unique about our broker-dealer relationship is I think it allowed me to evolve as a financial planner, because early on, I was assigned a lot of orphaned accounts. And if you're just getting your feet wet and you can call people that kind of have a warm lead to, even if it's just to learn how to talk to clients or learn something, like before I would call someone, I would do so much research. I knew way too much than I ever needed to know, but I think it ultimately made me a much better advisor by getting these orphan accounts. I think if you went back to how many things we sold through the broker dealer in 2011, I think we had like 4 or 5 annuities, which pretty much was all to my family, which kind of shows you kind of that side of the world, your Project 100 list. But then since then, there wasn't anything. I think in the last 4 years, we've never even utilized our broker dealer, but we still got everything approved. So that's why we're at this turning point now where there was never a lot of business in there. We don't do any new business there. Cetero, I think we learned a lot through that broker dealer, and it obviously transitioned. At one point, we worked with MetLife, had their own broker dealer, then they were bought by Cetero, and we kind of went through all that. And until you know enough, you don't, like, truthfully, Justin, I didn't even know. It wasn't until probably a few years ago why I sat there and I was like, why do we have a broker dealer? And then even then, it took me a few years to rip off that Band-Aid, because I don't know, just even like passing the Series 7 and the 66, I'm like, wow, if I don't join a broker dealer for 2 years, those things fall off. I remember how much time and energy I put into those. Like, it's almost like a mental block. You almost get like emotional about it. But I think ultimately for where we're going, and for us too, where we do help our clients with term life insurance and disability, we help them with their ongoing clients. If they come to us for a one-time plan, we do outsource them to other independent insurance companies as we are as well. So that part won't really change for us. Eventually, we may transition to fee only. I still enjoy the insurance side of it. I like yelling at underwriters. So that's where I always come back, and like when you look at XYPN, I've loved everything they've done for so long. We actually get a lot of younger advisors contact us, and they're like, hey, I wanted to ask you questions about XYPN. I'm like, I'm actually not a member. I love everything they do. If I didn't do term life insurance and disability, we probably would be working with them. So even our broker dealer relationship was kind of unique, but I think I learned a lot through that experience too. And if you're younger, I don't know what the training program would look like through there, but I think that's the one thing you could maybe pull out of some of those larger firms is you're probably going to get a better training program out of it too. But again, I think it depends. Like if I could start from scratch and I just came out of school, I probably would have done everything fee only and never been near a broker dealer. But again, hindsight's 20/20, and I don't regret anything I've done in the past. I've learned from it.
Well, and the whole point of me asking that in that story is, you've got to look at how do you best serve your clients? Yeah. And for you, there needs to be that component of being able to do those insurances. So, if you're not fee only right now, that doesn't mean you're any less of an advisor, because you're doing a great job. So I just want people to understand that. I think at the end of the day, it should be all about what we do for our clients, and that we put their interests first. And then, if everything's disclosed, everything's transparent, and clients understand what's going on, I have less of a concern. It's obviously the sneakiness behind it, but that's another conversation. I don't want to go down that road. But again, I talk to a lot of younger advisors or advisors in transition, and they're so confused or conflicted. People almost are apologetic because they're not fee only. And while that's a great place to head to, that doesn't alone make you a good or bad advisor. So I just want to hammer that home for people. So let's get back to niche. So let's talk about the niche today, Gen X, Gen Y physicians. How has that really allowed you guys to hit a lot of growth lately?
Yeah. So kind of going back to like 2018, come to a city, lots of physicians around us, find out how complicated their lives are. Even then in 2018, when we're like, hey, we're going to really go towards this group, we still couldn't even fully commit to that on our website. Even in our content, I couldn't do it. I was always scared of what most people are, that if our other clients see it and they're not physicians, are they going to leave us? Like they have to. They're going to be like, well, what the heck? He's not even talking to us anymore, like from a content perspective. We have never had that issue yet. About 3 years into this, 2 years of being like super focused. And even we do a thing called the Wealth Kill Weekly. Even when we send out content, and we'll put a blog post that's for physicians only, even there, I'll still put a little note like, hey, we know not all of you are physicians, but this still is very good talking points. I mean, really, it's high income young professionals. So in 2018, we started making that push. 2019 was when we were like, okay, this is definitely the group. It wasn't until early 2020 that our website looked the way that it was. Mm-hmm. We had the title on there. We had Gen X and Gen Y, but we still had like boat backgrounds or something because of the wealth kill theme.
You have the operating room in the background now, right? Like
Yeah.
you look at that, that's great, and I think that's a huge benefit of having the niche is you can start to communicate. And you mentioned the concern of, well, what would existing clients think? That's kind of something that I've thought about as I've rebranded and kind of changed the focus of RLS Wealth, is that not all of my clients today fit the avatar of what we're looking to help going forward. And I was afraid that it would turn them off, but as long as we meet regularly and I'm giving them the same attention and love that I've always given them, they're not going to care. At the end of the day, our clients want to make sure their needs are met and they're being taken care of. So whether or not you change your focus going forward, if they're being taken care of and their needs are addressed, they're probably not going to care who you work with. And with the exception of maybe logging into their client portal, they're probably not going to your website anyway. So they may not even really pick up on the fact that you're focusing on physicians.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, again, it always comes back to the saying that I think it's used a lot in our industry, but should be used more as, personal finance is more personal than it is finance.
Well, I started a blog last night that it's called Personal Finance, and it has that quote. It's just that. Yeah.
It really is. You build relationships with someone, for 7-8 years, and you're always there to answer their questions, and you're doing everything to help them, move forward and whatever their goals are. And we've never even had a question or a client ask us, why are you doing this? I think they understand, like, okay, well, that's who he's geared towards now. And, if anything ever changes, he'll let us know. I think it always comes back to transparency, always just be transparent. So, that's how we kind of stayed then to that physician side of things. And I think part of the problem too, Justin, not part of the problem, but I feel like even when you use the term niche, there's like, hey, I have a niche, and then there's like fully committing to your niche. And we didn't really fully commit to that niche until about midway through 2019. And that's where, like, this year, I checked, I've never done this before. I checked to see how many, what we call icebreaker calls. So we use Acuity for everything. And just to show you, like, the intense multiplier of actually focusing on a niche. So as of the end of July, for all intents and purposes, we'll say, we will end up having 84 icebreaker calls with only physicians. So people that found us through, our blog, through White Coat Investor, through Google, because we have a decent SEO presence now. Like, I think we don't have like some magical formula that's like, wow, we did this one blog and everyone signed up. It just kind of took like a few years to, I think, continue to say, like, hey, this is who we work with. This is who our content's about. But it took a while, and now it finally feels like all that hard work for about 2 years of saying we kind of work with a niche. Now we really work with a niche. Now we only work with a niche. Those phases are really starting to kind of show up now, and just even that prospect phase of things.
So 84 icebreaker calls year to date, or since you really went all in?
84 year to date.
All right. So barely halfway through the year. If you're an advisor, how am I going to have enough people to talk to? 84. Now, like, who knows what your batting percentage is? I don't care. It's at bats, all that matter. And what that tells you is it works. That's a lot of opportunities in half a year. So obviously the niche is helping. How are you mentioned blog, but how are you trying to position yourself so those Gen X, Gen Y physicians know you and know Wealth Kill is there for them?
Yep. So content on the blog. We're probably one of the few financial advisors that loves the White Coat Investor and Dr. Dolly. He's just a voice. He's a very powerful voice. And while he doesn't always say the best things about our industry, I think we probably earned some of those marks. He's allowed to say that. We could also rebuttal and say the same thing about, the medical industry. I still don't understand my insurance bills, but he has been a big part for us, not only to build a relationship with him, but for him to also include us on some things. And I think you and I have spoke about this a few months ago, like that top 10 list, that is a paid list. It's a very expensive paid list. Now he'll do some due diligence, but we have been consistently on that list, which I think is paid off. We always try to keep a good rapport with Dr. Dolly. And, even when we write new content, we'll send him a quick little note. Hey, Jim, if you could get this included in your monthly recap. That sounds so simple, but when we track the analytics, you get like a couple hundred hits on a brand new blog post when he sends out his email. Mm-hmm. So just continually staying in front of individuals. And we'll notice people that signed up for our email list like 2 years ago, and now they're signing up for an icebreaker call. We just did an ebook this year, which is pretty cool to watch that and see who's signing up for that. And then see where they convert into the icebreaker call. So I think finding your centers of influence and not referring to like estate attorneys and CPAs, but actually finding like the voice in your niche. And there's a voice for every niche out there. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. Someone out there on Twitter, Instagram, you name it. There's some voice out there that a lot of people listen to. Find that person, and do a good job getting in front of their viewers, because they're the trusted resource. You want to become the trusted resource. So that's been a big part for us. Blogging, we like YouTube. YouTube for the most part is me just doing videos of our blog post. But I think there's something powerful about video. I think there's one, you hear my voice, which I think podcasting is huge for that. But to see how I interact, to see my facial expressions, to see, man, he's too hyper, or he uses too many hand motions, or I don't know what it is. I just don't like his face. Like whatever the example would be, I think there's a good example there to set with, okay, I can deal with this person. Most of our clients live across the United States. You're going to have to look at me on Zoom for the rest of our working relationship. Are you cool with that? I think there's something powerful to video too. And we're still horrible at YouTube. But I kind of learned that at my last FinCon. It's something I'd like to continue to focus on. So just kind of little, not one magical sauce, Justin, just kind of a little bit here, a little bit there. But everything is still saying that, hey, we work with this group. Everything is to that group. And I think that's the more powerful part of it.
It's consistency. We talked about it last week with Nina Marie about being consistent, and consistency can be all over the board. It can be your frequency of posting. It can be where you're posting. But I think that I like being on multiple platforms because people learn in different ways. They consume content. Some people are podcast only. I saw somebody on Twitter say that if your podcast doesn't open up on a web browser and stream, he won't listen to it on Google or Apple. So if you want to get and give yourself the biggest opportunity to get in front of them, you need to be on multiple platforms. And if you enjoy doing it, it's easier to do that. So I love it. I mean, I'm a big fan of video for the same reasons that you just said. And I also think it's fun because video, if you have somebody to help you out, you can chop it up and make smaller pieces, make micro pieces out of it and run it other places, and you can get a lot of run out of it. I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's good for search. But I do think that, as human beings, we're visual creatures, good or bad. And if you can see that helps out, that helps build trust. So I echo the sentiment on video. And just, I don't know, your point is on podcasts. I really love taking the video audio and putting it on the podcast as well. So it's not just interview podcast style. I don't think that's the way your podcast is, but I like Gary Vee's approach to just making it, like he calls it, the audio experience. So it's speeches, it's videos, it's actual interviews. Like I really like that because one, it's fresh content from time to time. Two, you may, like, depending on your schedule, what all you're doing, sometimes it's hard to get a lot of interviews lined up. But if you're doing videos as well, and maybe you speak here and there, and you can add those through, it keeps the feed fresh and activity. And people aren't going to say, well, it's been a month since he's had an interview, because there's been other posts, other blog posts, or other podcasts on there. So I like that as a strategy for having the activity and repurposing just to fill the time until you get the next big one. So content is one way. How has specializing on one group really allowed you to do your job better? Ashby Daniels is a very good friend of mine. He only works with retirees. He says, look, I love the fact that I don't need to know about student loans. I don't need to know about 529 plans. There's all this stuff that's in financial planning that he's kind of weeded out of having to know. He knows it, but he doesn't have to be an expert in it. He just really needs to know what retirees need to know and really dive deep in that. Have you found that specialization into that world has helped you?
Yeah, I would say exactly what Ashby said. And then we're just the opposite side of that. And that's like the one thing I even sometimes describe to individuals when they're talking to me, ask about a niche. It's like, do I still have clients that have Medicare questions? I do. I just have to do a little bit more research before I give them a response, or I have to go find an expert in that. Student loans, we are that expert. We know how student loans work. So, I'm currently reading a book on medical contracts. Like, never in my craziest financial planning dreams, I was like, let me buy a medical contract book, because that seems like some good late night reading.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah. So it's just like, it's those little things that allow you to answer questions. And while I'm never going to give any of my clients legal advice, just knowing what they're referring to and how their their pay is structured, and how their non-compete is, and how their letter of intent leads into their like just those little moving pieces. I think specializing it almost makes it makes the more complicated financial plan, as I said, for my demographic easier, because that's all we do. We know more about student loans than I ever thought we would. We know more about medical contract. We know more about cash flow planning and budgeting when your income literally quadruples. We know what's the difference between a conventional mortgage and a physician mortgage, and why one may be better than the other in that certain spot. It's just exactly as Ashby said, in the sense of you don't have to focus on as much. You have to find your few things, and obviously you're always going to get stuff outside of the box, and that's the fun part, right? That's where you get to go research something new, and keeps every client a little bit different and every situation a little bit more unique. But having a niche and specializing, I think it allows you to just use your energy more efficiently, which makes you a better advisor.
What's your game plan for as your Gen X, Gen Y physicians begin to get older? Will you adapt WealthKill to keep up with them? Will you continue to focus on those younger doctors? What's the game plan for growing with your niche?
Yeah, great question. And you said it perfectly at the start. And this is why I chose to label it as a generation thing, not an age thing, because as my clients age, as I age, I want to know the next big things with them. Eventually we're going to have to learn the best ways to prepare for college planning. And hey, you make $1 million of household income. Yes, you should still file a FAFSA form. We may not get too much out of it, but we have to understand the best way to go get, private loans now, because you make a lot of money. And then we'll kind of transition back into that retirement and decumulation and sequence of returns again. And while we kind of look at some of those items when we look out long term, for the most part, most of our clients are under the age of 50. I'd even come back and say most are probably under the age of 45. So we plan to grow with them. We plan to become experts as they go through different phases of life. But it's funny. I literally just thought about that yesterday, Justin. I was like, I almost forgot why we said Gen X and Gen Y. We didn't say like physicians under the age of 50. And it's because of that same thing. I enjoy being near that same phase of life as my clients. I plan to continue to do that going forward.
And just a side question, the vision for WealthKill, is it to become a bigger firm, and that you may one day hire a younger advisor to work with Gen Z and Gen AA or whatever they end up being down the road? Or is it, hey, we've got a real great, small firm, maybe not technically lifestyle practice, but pretty close, and we'll just age with our clients, and when the time comes, we'll go into retirement?
Yeah, I chuckle because it's the one thing I think about every day. So this is how I've always described it. And we're literally trying to hire someone right now, as I've noted, to kind of grow that next phase into, when it was on Twitter that I put that, on just kind of asking about the notes. That's kind of where this all triggered. And we're looking to hire almost say a second paraplanner, but they're going to be more involved with the actual review meetings. And then ultimately, I would like them to start taking over some meetings. So as I sit here today, Justin, I have an income figure in mind that I want to get to. And I think that puts me around 100 to 125 households. I want to stop, catch my breath. I turn 32 next week. I'm thinking about like 35. I think about what does that next chapter look like? It might be like, hey, we have 100 households. This is a beautiful ship. We'll continue to do one-time plans, because we do a lot of one-time financial plans. I really actually enjoy those, mostly because we're getting a lot of DIYers from the white coat investor. Maybe we'll just do that to kind of supplement extra income, but still stay fresh with everything, in addition to our review meetings and all those. But if I know myself well enough, I probably will get bored with that idea, and we will strive to become something a little bit bigger at some point. Every time I say, like, just take it easy, enjoy this phase, like something new comes up and I get all excited, and then we go for it. So current plan is to hit a certain income number that comes with a certain amount of households, see how that feels, and then figure out, do we add, more advisors and grow, and maybe, kind of divvy up some of WealthKill's ownership. I don't know. I have a lot to learn, but we'll hit it in stride.
Over those few years, if you're anything like me, the idea will change. Because I launched thinking lifestyle practice is the way I wanted to go. Then I thought, well, let's see if we can build something bigger and like maybe a regional type firm. And then it was kind of back to lifestyle, but really no set end growth, just kind of feel it on its way. And then now I've hired an advisor, and it's kind of, okay, now I want to build this to be, it doesn't have to be anything huge, but I want to build a company, not a advisor's practice, which is to me kind of exciting. So you'll probably change your mind, and it will be people that you meet and ideas that get put in front of you that will change your vision. So for anybody out there that changes their mind and pivots all the time, like if you're a business owner, or even if you're an entrepreneurial advisor, that's normal. Like that's part of the way our minds are wired. So that's okay. All right. So we've kind of got where you're at today and the success that you're having because of the niche. Again, 84 icebreakers, 86 icebreakers. I lost the number, but 80 some icebreakers in 7 months time, from all doctors in your ideal niche. So it shows the success. If we work back, you kind of hit on it a little bit, but is there any more do you want to add to the story about like why physicians? You moved to Philly, your friends around you are all physicians, you're hearing their problems, you're in finance, they're probably asking you questions at barbecues. Like, was there any more to the story, or did it just find you?
It literally just kind of found us. Like, I always knew that I liked our generation. So like if you went back through the different phases of our website, like it said like high income Gen X and Gen Y. It actually said that up until like, I think literally mid 2019, because I was always scared to commit. Like I didn't want to be that small. And then it's funny, you get that small and you get more. Like I would have, if you would have told me choose a niche, and if you choose that niche and focus on it, by 2 years from now, you'll have, if someone said you'll have 30 icebreaker calls in 1 year, I'm like, that's pretty good. That's great.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show like it works. But it really is that simple. I mean, it was, again, we kind of knew where we wanted to be, but we didn't know if that was going to be business owners, because I have a pretty large background in just business ownership from my family. That one, I liked the idea, but it was kind of hard to market to that group. It was hard to find them. Physicians, when it started to click, I was like, this is beautiful. I mean, you can literally find them, to the point where we literally started, we were doing interviews with physicians. Some of these physicians that I told you in our neighborhood, I would take them out for lunch or coffee, and I would literally just ask them questions. I would never sell them business. I'd never even followed up for any type of business. I literally just said, what are your pain points? And then one of them was a chief resident, and the chief resident says, well, the last guy came in and just sold like disability insurance and then permanent life insurance. Like, you know a lot about student loans. Can you come into Thomas Jefferson and just talk? So we talk about student loans once, then we come and talk about cash flow planning, and then we come back the next year, and then another medical school reaches out. And by choosing that, it was just easier to truly focus on it too. So it almost all started to click. But it's like, the niche made sense. It was complicated. It was still our age bracket. And I think there's enough resources too that the subscription model is very appealing to them. And then if they come from the white coat investor, they also are relatively fee conscious. They know the questions to ask. They know that, 1% on $2 million, they start to scratch their head a little bit. So even just knowing like our fee structure is based on literally physician income. Like we know how it works. We know how it grows. We still cap it at the end. So even as their net worth grows, everything really came from us choosing that niche. And then we just built everything around it. But we didn't seek that out. Like I joke on literally our video on the white coat investor, like my wife's not a physician, my parents aren't physicians. I don't even know if there's any physicians like in my direct family. It was just a group that we liked. It was complicated and it drew me to it, and kind of everything else fell in place from there. So there was not really anything crazier to it than that.
I can already see questions coming. So you mentioned you charge your fee based off of income. Can you give a high level of how that works? Because people are familiar with subscription models, but I think they think it's $200 flat, whatever a month, whatever it might be. But give a little bit of insight to the income-based subscription model.
Yeah, so we look at two things. We look at income and net worth. And net worth is pretty much just your assets under management or assets under advisement. So your 401k is included in that, but we're very lenient. So base fees $300 per month. If you're in training, so resident or fellow, we cut that down to $200 per month. We do different brackets. If your income is above 500,000, you go into the next bracket. If your income is above $1 million, you go into the next bracket. And then we have that same math for net worth. If your investable, your assets under advisement is over 500,000, next bracket. million next bracket. And then for AUA, we also put one over 3 million. So our highest fee could always be $1,100 per month. So it does cap out on the high side. Most of our clients, that's the other crazy thing. A lot of clients really evolve quickly into that, but we're probably average around $500 per month when you kind of plug in the high end, the low end. That's our monthly subscription is probably right around, $500 per month.
So you're charging two fees, the income-based fee and then the asset-based fee.
It's one fee. We use a calculator.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
you're somewhere between 300 and 1,100. Most of them are going to be closer to like 500, probably like high fours is probably where it comes in as the average. But we just kind of use like, here's your base fee. And then we have this silo here for net worth. We have this silo here for income. And then each one has its own bracket. So this column plus this column plus this column equals your monthly fee. And we put that right on our website. We put that right on White Coat Investor. I'm a big fan of The Office. So I use like the Halpern family, the Schrute family. So give like actual examples of what you can expect.
How, from an admin standpoint, is that a pain to measure and track, or is it pretty easy to run?
Very easy to run. So we on Acuity, we pretty much ask that question: what's your income around? What's your net worth around? And then even on there, if they have a higher net worth, we'll then come back and ask more questions. Like, are you putting your primary residence in here? Is there like a surgery center that's kind of throwing this off a little bit? And then work backwards. And then on our annual reviews, we just keep an eye on things. And like, if you go from 500,000 to 510, I'm not going to say, sorry guys, pay up.
Right.
There's, some margin of error in there that we're okay with. And we say, we want to be paid fairly, but we also want to make sure that we're being fair to you as well. So we keep a little bit of leniency in there, but pretty much on an annual review, because we do so much comprehensive financial planning, every client is a comprehensive planning client. We know the day their income changes. We know the day that their net worth changes. So we can monitor pretty closely.
It's another unique way to do things for advisors, to just kind of add to the confusion of, if you're starting your own firm, how do you charge fees? Isaiah Douglas is a friend of mine, and he works with veterinarians, and he has a similar, I think his is just net worth, but a similar type of thing. So it's good. I appreciate you sharing that with everybody, because I know people are going to ask, what's that mean? So that may save you a few phone calls and emails since you described what it was. Going back to working with physicians, I think the beauty of your niche is there is this career path that we don't have, a career path that says these are our upcoming doctors. You think dentists would fall in the same camp. What else? I'm blanking. Go to the to get meds. Pharmacy school. Yeah. If you're thinking of where is a niche, and you're not an individual that has to be super excited, if you can tell yourself, hey, I can just go learn a niche and build a good business, I think that's great, because you're not going to be the only advisor that identifies, here's this group of residents. But there are a lot of advisors that are going to take the easy route and say, hey, here's a group of residents, I'm just going to go sell them stuff. Mm-hmm. And then if you come in offering planning and advice and guidance on areas that those salespeople aren't doing, you're going to stand out. So I think it's a lot easier to stand out amongst a crowd of people who are just trying to sell stuff because it's easy, and be an advisor and people will identify with you. So I love the idea of identifying a niche where there is a starting point in their career, if it's a career focused niche, and targeting those people and getting with them early on. So I think that's smart.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as we kind of get towards the end of the outline and the hour, obviously you value having a niche. If you were trying to, maybe not convince, but kind of sharing with other advisors, what is that value of that niche, and why should that be something they really consider?
Yeah, great question. I think it sounds almost weird to say, but I truthfully think it makes everything easier. When you keep throwing out that really large fishing net, like it's kind of hard to focus. Like, I honestly think my life was more stressful as a generalist than it is as a highly specialized, we only work with this group of people. Content's easier, your pricing model is easier, your scheduling is easier. You literally know, like right now, most of our clients, if they're not already attendings, they're studying for the boards. Most of our attendings, or they're transferring to attendings, we know that we have like 2 or 3 months. I think that's why in the month of July, we had 20 icebreaker calls. And it's because a lot of fellows and residents that just finished, they probably don't start their job till late August or early September. So as I sit here, I start to think, well, I don't want to do current client reviews in that phase. We should be ready to onboard new clients. Everything just gets better clarity. Everything comes into perspective when you can start to say, all right, I work with this group. Here's their busy time. Here's their calm time. Here's when we probably don't hear from at all. You know, even just like the surge meetings, which we're really excited to start doing that next year. Like, we can start to get a lot more organized. So I know it's scary. Like I said, it's not like one day or like right out of Penn State, I was like, hey, niche, here it is. Doctors, we got it. I mean, it took 7 years of being a generalist, kind of knowing I always wanted to have a niche, to then kind of like putting one toe in the water and just saying high income, Gen X, Gen Y. And then I think we said high income business owners, physicians, and I think dentists. I think I just had this like passion always on business owners just because of my family history. And then it just was a really hard group to really market to. And then even there, like we say physicians today, we still have a lot of dentists that come to us and some vets here and there too, I think just because of being on the white coat investor, but it just made everything easier, Justin. I mean, I know it's scary and some people will never do that. And they probably built the most successful firms out there. I mean, look at Fisher Investments, like they're just a huge broad stroke of the brush. If you have more than $500,000, call us. We don't care if you're the janitor or, you know, the CEO. I mean, they're having, you know, immense success from that side where I don't want that. You know, like you said, I'm okay with maybe just a regional firm at some point where we just help a lot of doctors. But that niche made everything much easier. It gave me clarity and it gave me much better perspective, I think, too.
Any advice you would give somebody as they pursue a niche? So they've bought in, you've convinced them, they've identified a group. Any advice you would give them going down that path?
Yeah, you know, I always thought my niche was going to be business owners. Like, I really thought that. I thought it was going to be Gen X and Gen Y business owners. I had a story to tell. Like, you know, I started my own business at 16, literally cleaning the insides of tanning beds because my parents owned tanning salons. Today, that's frowned upon, not good for your skin. Don't do that. But I would literally go to local tanning salons and pull apart beds at 16 and clean bulbs off. I was like, oh my gosh, this is easy. I'll talk about this all day. And then all of a sudden we move to a city and we find out we have lots of physician friends and we talk to some of their friends and we're like, well, cool. This is really complicated. Like student loans, income, contracts, family, houses. And we just went a completely different route. So I think naturally kind of figure out what your niche would be, but it might not be that. It's okay. You don't have to be like, well, both my parents were doctors. I should definitely only work with doctors. Maybe that doesn't end up being the niche. Just kind of take that general, all right, here's some area that I like. Here's one that I like. For us, I think the area that we liked was Gen X and Gen Y. I thought it was going to be business owners. It became physicians. So I would think just kind of keep an open mind, know like the broad range that you want to be in. But I think the niche has a tendency to evolve. Again, in a perfect world, I would have said Gen X, Gen Y physicians in 2011, and this would have been much easier by now, but it took time. And why I think we have a pretty good niche today. I mean, it took a while to even get to this point where we are today.
It's tough for people to have faith that if you just trust that it will find it, it will evolve, that it actually happens. Like we feel like we need to have it dialed in. And sometimes I think if you're so zoned in and you're so focused that you actually miss the one that would be better for you. So I do think it is good to be more open-minded and, to your point, have a direction that you want to be going, but be open to where you're being pulled and where the market is telling you you're needed. And then that might become the niche. So I really like that. The other thing I was going to add on that I really like that you said is, you know, most groups have a voice. Figure out how to get to know that voice and, you know, leverage their platform. You got to do it genuinely. It's got to, you know, there's got to be value to them. But I think that's a very smart thing that I don't think I've heard anybody say before, is look for the leader of the group and get to know them real well.
Yeah.
Final question. I think I know the answer, but maybe not. If you weren't working with physicians, knowing that you see the value of a niche today, who would you be working with?
What do you think the answer is going to be?
Well, up until the last couple of minutes, I would have said athletes. But then now that you kept on talking about small business owners, I think you would be business owners.
So if there was no barriers to entry.
And I think that the business owner over time would have been narrowed down to a certain type of business owner. Like it may have been I don't know if it'd be like retail, but I think there would have been a niche within business owners that would have been more specific.
Tanning salon owners. I would get all three of them that are left in the country probably.
No, I think you go spray tan.
It's funny. One of our best friends in Philadelphia literally owns an awesome spray tan company in Philly called Baked. If there was no barriers to entry and I could get to them easier, it probably would have been athletes. Only because I just love sports so much. Like if I could only work with NHL players, like that would have been the coolest thing ever. It's just very hard to do. I'd also have to probably be really good at like cross-border planning because not many great American hockey players. There's still a lot, but not as many as Canada and you head over to Europe. So if I had to pick and there was no barriers to entry and I just had a line of, professionals sitting outside, if they were all NHL players, I would have been super pumped. But I make the joke now that I think a lot of my physicians over a lifetime of career earnings will probably beat a lot of those hockey players. Maybe not the all-stars, but most of them from a career total. I think I got some good ones on the books right now.
Yeah, they have a much longer career life than NHL players do, or any athletes in that matter.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, in closing, any final thoughts? Anything that maybe we neglected to get? I think we hit it all. I think you've proven the fact that niches work. I dropped a couple of names of a couple other individuals that have very strong niches as well. But anything else you'd want to offer up to the advisors listening?
I think it's just that commitment, right? It might not be for you. Maybe you don't have to have a niche, but I think truly committing to it is half the battle. And even when I say niche, I don't think when I said we had a niche, we still weren't fully committed in the sense of writing blog posts, doing videos, reading physician contract books. That didn't happen until probably about a year and a half ago. And every time we committed a little bit more to that niche, we got a multiple back from it. And I think the only reason why I dropped the year-to-date icebreaker call is because I feel like that's the hard work from 2019, where we just started to really put more time and energy into it. And now it's showing. So every time we invested a little bit more into our niche, it was a very good investment. We got a lot back. And it was scary as heck along the way. Every time you commit something more, like putting that picture of a surgeon on our website, like I could literally have cold sweats before bed just thinking about, do we actually want to hit go on that website tomorrow? So it's not this, rainbows and butterflies and everything's easy. You're going to have some pain points, but I think committing to it and really committing to it, it works. You just got to give a little bit of time too. It's not like, again, we did say, put that up on our website and we had, 300 doctors saying, yes, you're the guy because you have that cool surgeon on your website. It takes time. So again, I think if you come back to it, just commit to it, but really give it enough time and give it enough runway to actually make sure that you're given an opportunity to win.
I'm going to squeeze one more thing, not because I want to get the last word in, but when you talked about the website, it made me smile. So I had the complete opposite. Now, my niche is more of a mindset niche. Entrepreneurial, people who want to write their own story, not happy just living a traditional life. As soon as we flipped the switch on that new website, it gave me the confidence to go out and say, here's who we work with. I don't know why having that website there made it easier for me to do that, but it gave me the confidence to put my stake in the ground and say, here's who we're working with. Here's who we help. If that's not you, then we're not a good fit. And I know plenty of other advisors that I can connect you with, because there's nothing wrong with, wanting to work a 30-year career and retire. Like, that's great, but plenty of advisors can help that. But I want to help people that are really going to go chase their dreams and do things, because that's going to be creative planning. And that's the type of planning that I want to do. So I had the opposite. I was stoked when the website went, because now I could go tell this story, because the story I wanted to tell was reflected by my website, which is the face of the company. So it could go the other way.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking time out of your day on a Friday afternoon to talk about niching down and the benefits from it. It's obvious that it works. I think we're both in agreement that you kind of want to let it come to you. So don't force it, but just leave yourself open and kind of look for signs. I'm a big believer in, the universe will bring to you what you need. You just have to be willing to see and accept it. And as you go down this journey of finding your niche, it's okay if you pivot. It's okay if you go down thinking it's going to be Gen X, Gen Y business owners, and you end up with Gen X, Gen Y physicians. That's all a part of the process. And along the way, those clients you're helping still fit who you want to help with. It's the details, it's the expertise that you develop that spirals into helping your content, which helps you get the 86 calls in 7 months. That all works out. So I appreciate you taking the time and telling that story. Thank everybody for watching. Didn't get any questions this week, but I'm destined to get questions in the chat box on YouTube. So this will replay on Monday morning. And if you're listening to this on Monday morning and you did not get the Advisor Tomorrow newsletter in your mailbox, go to justincastelli.io/newsletter and sign up for that. It's a bi-weekly newsletter with a bunch of stuff, conversations like this, articles and things, fueling advisors growing for the future. And if you want the show notes from this, you go to justincastelli.io/blog. I'll have a blog post there, link to Chad's website so you can see the great website, link to some of their social media as well so you can see what he's doing, and link to Twitter so you can follow him and see what he's up to. So Chad, thanks again for joining me. Everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thanks, Justin. This was awesome.
All right, so we're just gonna randomly drop off real quick. So like, there's no like waiting room. So
I figured I was following your lead.
All right, have a good weekend.
All right, thanks, Justin. Have a good one, man.
All right, see ya.
See ya.